Now, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Benga Komolafe, has recently highlighted successes in Nigeria's oil sector, citing 51 approved field development plans expected to attract about $17.64 billion investment and yield 2.12 billion barrels of oil, including 13.13 trillion cubic feet of gas over 5 years. Also, $2.5 billion investment in 175 well drillings and $2.68 billion in 842 well workovers are also anticipated. Now, despite current oil production averaging 1.33 billion barrels per day, technical potential stands at 2.26 million barrels per day, offering investment opportunities. From London, UK, Seun Dania joins me. He's an energy consultant, and he will be shedding more light on this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we see a projection of about $17.64 billion of investments, a yield of about 2.12 billion barrels of oil. We're looking at 13.13 trillion cubic feet of gas in 5 years and $2.5 billion investment in well drillings. These numbers, very interesting, I must say. And to some other people, they will say this is pretty good if we can actually hit the heights. But then, is this visible, considering the certain constraints that the Nigeria oil and gas industry is faced with?
Oh, definitely it's visible, very feasible. The thing is, of course, we have the underlying challenges, which are insecurity, and I believe that the current administration has been doing quite a lot about that. We also need to ensure that our currency is stable, and then we also need to ensure that we gather, we put in the right infrastructure to ensure that people's investments do not go in flame. But if we are going by the reserves that we have under the ground, yes, it's very feasible if we put in all the work in place.
But then if we look at the issue around insecurity, pipeline vandalism, we see that a lot have been expended by the Nigerian government to dealing with these particular menace, but then the gains have not been commendable, appreciable, as the case may be. We talk about infrastructural development also. Quite a number of challenges in that particular area, a lot of bottlenecks when it comes to having that come into effect. Now, looking at these challenges, what do you think the problems are that the Nigerian government will need to tackle headlong if we are hoping to see a close in the gap when we talk about oil production and the benefits that should come with it?
The solutions are in the already passed Petroleum Industry Act, where it talks about how they manage or how they properly manage, host communities, whereby a lot of the ownership of the assets belong to the communities. They establish sort of like a trust whereby, the communities see the reinvestment of, the oil and gas assets. And that way they would also take ownership of ensuring that they secure the assets around them. These things are more, of course, will be things that I believe that will get, the security levels to a lower, because what it is always reward versus repercussion. So if you have people who are already making so much money from vandalizing pipelines and creating chaos within the places, you have to also, then what are the repercussions? Are there any of them getting caught? Are there any of them getting arrested? Are any of them getting jailed? And then of course, for the people who are within the communities, the thing is, if they see rewards in joining, these militant groups who end up vandalizing properties and everything, versus, them being actually benefiting from the oil assets that we have. So I think, pretty much on the fundamental level, community management is one of the, host community management is one of the, and it's all covered within the PIA. So implementing, the actual things that we have in the Petroleum Industry Act, which of course the NUPRC and the government have actually committed to, we'll begin to see results very soon.
All right, so when it comes to prioritizing investment opportunities for both domestic and international investors in Nigeria's oil sector, what do you think the criteria is and how much of that has been met?
Criteria, a lot of people want to see secure environments. A lot of people want to be able to, secondly, even for international investors, when they invest in a country, they want to be able to get their proceeds out. So Nigeria needs to be very enabling environment. Right now, if you ask me, my belief is that we're a developing nation and we should, kind of like channel our energies towards solutions that work for developing nations, So if we have to put in things that may not be normal, but would attract investments, because capital is difficult to get. And when people want to invest, everybody's looking for stability. So for people to want to come into Nigeria to actually put in so much money, the government needs to also, and they've always had incentives, like pioneer status, tax breaks and whatnot. But I think they probably need to, look at that further. We know the country needs money. However, for businessmen, they always have to, balance their risk and see the opportunities. Right now, Nigeria, of course, with the fall of the Naira, it's been difficult for international organizations to get their money out. So these are the things that a lot of people look out for. So Nigeria, the government needs to work on reestablishing investor confidence within the markets, and definitely we'll see the boom. But it's without a doubt that Nigeria is the biggest market in Africa, and even so other parts of the world, in terms of oil products and whatnot, and people are willing to invest in Nigeria. However, those fundamental issues need to be properly attained, and then investors will come rushing. They are already at our doors. They've been here, some are pulled out, but everybody's watching. That's why I see during every election, you see a lot of Nigeria, you have a lot of international papers, always, monitoring, national observers monitoring Nigerian elections, because they want to report to people outside the world, all over the world, the status of Nigeria, if it's stable, what the new administration, entails. And that way, investors are able to make informed decisions.
Okay, let's tie that around the Petroleum Industry Act you mentioned earlier and the issue around the licensing rounds. Now, what is the regulatory framework like, and how robust is it in ensuring transparency and fairness?
So, as it's where we've seen results, right? So the NUPRC, they're committed to transparency. The industry, the PIA, requires fair, transparent, and competitive bidding process, and we can see that from the NUPRC. They already, right now, they've published licensing round guidelines, and they've also published, the plans to develop 7 deep water blocks. This is it's not the first, but it's very, 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 it's applaudable, for us to be seeing this kind of thing. So it ensures that, the guidelines are properly clear, the bidding terms, the opening them to qualify domestic and international companies, all of those information are clearly out there for the public. And, it seems that they're using a very transparent evaluation process. And even though people have criticized and raised concerns about the past licensing rounds, I think it's very important that we monitor this new licensing round that is about to commence, and we then can able to score the leadership of the NUPRC.
Okay, so at this point, we now look at Angola, because that's another major oil-producing country on the continent. Even as Nigeria is struggling to get the numbers, we see another African country that is trying to diversify its economy. And the Chinese President Xi Jinping has come out to pledge his support for Chinese firms in Angola, even as we know that the country is hoping to look at how it can improve the manufacturing industry and the agricultural industry. So we'll quickly look at that. Seun. So one question a lot of people are asking right now is that why in the first place is the Chinese government willing to help Angola diversify its economy? Is it to the benefits of the Chinese government, or it will speak more in improving Angola's economy?
It's without a doubt that Angola owes the Chinese a significant amount of money. I think running well over $12 billion, So, of course, it's in the best interest of the Chinese to help Angola to diversify away from oil, and definitely China is looking to secure a more stable and reliable borrower in the long term, and a broader Angolan economy would definitely create new markets for Chinese goods and services. And yes, of course, in the long run, it's now up to the Angolans to ensure that all of these monies that they're being borrowed, all the goods and services, all the expertise they actually use to develop their own country and, reduce their dependence and reliance on the Chinese. So, pretty much everybody has their own interest when it comes to trade. So the Chinese have their interest, the Angolans should also have theirs.
So then why is Angola even planning to move away from a major money spinner. We know that what it gets monthly and yearly is in the tune of millions and millions of dollars. At a point, it was even topping the chart when it comes to oil production on the African continent. But then it's looking at other areas whereby it can generate more revenue. Why is that?
Can you hear me? I mean, Angola has huge potential in agriculture. I think they have huge deposits of, the agricultural like resources. They can grow a lot of sugarcane, coffee, cotton. They also have reserves of base metals. Even though these have not received any level of investment since oil, and we know that the world we are in now, we're talking about climate change, we're talking about global warming, and people are going towards cleaner, more renewable energy. So not moving away completely, but diversifying the economy is actually the way to go. Developing all these sectors would also create jobs, reduce reliance on imports, provide more stable economic foundation for the country of Angola. And sky is always the limit. Everybody in Africa moved away from most of their resources, even like Nigeria, when we all discovered oil. It's time to go back, diversify our economies, make use of agriculture and other things that will make people more reliant and more dependent on the African countries.
But then the question will always be if these other areas are sustainable, most especially when investments go into agriculture, manufacturing, or probably the mining sector. Of course, if funds can be pulled into those areas, can they sustain the economy, not only for Angola, but of course, Nigeria that you mentioned?
Definitely. So, of course, it's not abandoning one for one. It's actually diversifying, and diversifying will mean that you will explore all those avenues. So you're not leaving oil 100%. So there's oil will be there. You also use that. Let's not forget that the Western region, in Nigeria at some time was built with money from cocoa. And cocoa is still there. People are exporting cocoa on a regular basis. People are exporting even coal, even as much as little as seismic seeds from the north. We're exporting a lot of things in Nigeria in terms of agriculture, but are we getting the benefits directly? No, we are not. And definitely, it can sustain us as a nation. There are a lot of nations that, we have palm oil in excess here in Nigeria. Agriculture definitely can sustain the nation.
Okay, finally, Seun, before I just let you go, I just want to chip this in. We see that Nigeria and some other African countries that export crude oil, exporting these commodities in their crude form. Now we hear that if the Port Harcourt refinery is brought back on life and starts operating, Nigeria will be able to reduce the amount they pay to buy petrol, as it were. Now, two areas. Number one, is there something that can be done in regards expanding the value chain whereby Nigeria can have these commodities processed and exported in its finished form? Two, and will that also translate into a reduction in the inflation figures?
Well, two things. Yes, it will reduce the prices, but of course, the only way that will happen is if Nigeria prices its own refined products in Naira, because what it is everybody benchmarks the price of oil with, international oil prices. So crude oil that is actually refined, even though, there's some dollar components in the drilling operations, but a large part of the operational costs, is also in Naira. So if we have our refined products priced in Naira, definitely Nigerians will see the impacts. They will feel the impacts 100%. The prices will be lower because then we're using our local currency to buy our products, so we can actually use our own local figures and statistics to benchmark our prices.
All right. Dania, energy consultant, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.